Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to another MentorCore event. I'm Dan Ayala, one of the co-founders of MentorCore. My partner, Lisa Beth Lentini Walker, was unavailable today. She's it's on assignment, so we've got her on assignment today, and so you'll just have me. Just a little bit about MentorCore. MentorCore is a community for security and privacy and ethics and compliance professionals to come together to spend time learning from each other, growing our careers, and helping each other through a sense of community. There's so much that's in common between these two major areas, security and privacy and ethics and compliance. And Lisa Beth and I wanted to be able to capitalize on have people capitalize on each other's experiences and be able to grow in these fields that are oftentimes very heads down, very isolating, very insulated. And we talk a lot about sharing about what we do, but not necessarily sharing the ways in which we can help each other grow. So that's the foundation of MentorCore. If you're interested in learning more about MentorCore, mentorcore.biz, B-I-Z, is the website. There is a membership that we have available with additional benefits. But for today, we're excited to welcome Yvette Lingam, who's currently in the UK and is joining us to talk about her unusual career journey. Yvette, welcome. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you, Dan. Very happy to be here as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Well, today I'm actually running a small consultancy business specializing in markets research and events production. And then at the same time as well, I also volunteer as a compliance and ethics advisor for a small business, a manufacturing business, and I just provide advice into how to build their anti-corruption program, policies, procedures, but also look after the whole legal compliance, tax compliance as well. So they actually produce a cocoa-based product. The plants and facilities are based in Cameroon, and I help them remotely actually to make sure the business is compliant, and what they do is definitely follow all the rules. We are getting there slowly. It's not as easy because of the fact that we're working remotely, and I haven't had the chance to go to Cameroon for a couple of years now. So that's what I do at the moment. Before that, I was working for an organization called C5. So this is where I don't know whether you want me to continue into where I started, or just
let's talk about your backstory. Let's talk about your we can skip beyond your first steps, but tell me a little bit about your backstory, your origin story. Where do you come from? How did some of your university, what your schooling looked like, and eventually lead into how you got into the compliance space?
Great. So I was born in Cameroon, in the city called Yaoundé, it's the capital in Cameroon, and I am French by marriage. And I grew up within a Christian background, a Christian values background in family, and my family as well is a military family, because my late dad was a lieutenant colonel within the army in Cameroon. And on top of that, he was also a judge within the military legal system. Okay. So due to his career, because he was involved in judging some very high profile military cases, especially attempted military coups, as you may know in Africa, we actually grew up with the fact that we needed to be very careful because of that. And for our security, we were very discreet about where we were doing, what we were doing. It was very restricted in a couple of areas where we were meant to go, sometimes most of the time. And I do remember that growing up, because of that, he used to relocate from city to cities for, especially with a short time. I always used to stay in one city for a year or 2 years, and then move to another because my father needed to move to another city and go along. So I vividly remember starting the first term of my school year in one school, in one city, and continued a second term and third year in another city. I had to really adapt to change. It was kind of something that I grew up with, and probably that helped me to grasp change, to adapt quickly to change. It wasn't. It's no longer a surprise for me to change, to go to any place or change whenever it happens. So that's a couple of things that I vividly remember that I was grew up. My mother as well, she was a social service advisor for the military as well. So I was just, again, surrounded by a universe where discipline and instructions were definitely something to respect it and to follow. And with that, maybe this has shaped me into respecting compliance, understanding that at this for these particular things you have to do, you have to comply with the rules. So I value this very much. So growing up there up until my high school in Cameroon, and then I left to attend a university in France where I chosen to study law. Again, inspiration from my father, but not the judicial system or being a barrister. I wasn't interested in that at that point. I decided then to do international business law, where I was more focusing on learning the contractual aspect of infrastructure program funded by development banks, the World Bank, also export credit guarantees or insurance, things like that. So that led me to graduate, stayed in France, and went back home in Cameroon to start working. So my first experience was with a consulting boutique firm based in Cameroon in Yaoundé. They were specializing in bid tenders and definitely winning those tenders, writing those tenders, proposals for, again, public procurement services, sometimes private as well. But most of those projects were funded by the World Bank
Okay.
and the French development agency called Agence Française de Développement in Cameroon. So it was, again, I must say it was in line with my graduation. So there was not a big change for that. So that was fine. So after a year with them, I was selected by the UNDP, which is the United Nations for Development Program, to help a mission. That was an assignment that that was benefited for the government in Cameroon to help them actually formulates the legal framework of exports, national export in Cameroon for certain strategic projects. So I had then to understand what was the laws, what were the laws, what were the procedures, and what was the map of a specific process of exportation of some of those strategic products. So I went into interviewing people. That was the first time actually to run a survey, for example, speak with exporters, understanding what were their challenges. Because at the end of the assignment, I had to suggest some recommendation as to how to make sure that whole policy can really promote exports and be beneficial for the country, but also for the exporters. Now, to the end of that assignment, I just thought it was more public procurement centric, and I was interfacing with the government in one side, the financial institutions in one side, and sometimes the subcontractors, depending on the awards or the tenders we were winning. And there was nothing really related to companies as a corporation. So that's then decided to kind of look for maybe another job and either work for a company or work for another consulting firm where I will have access with companies, interact with companies. And then I applied for a job to join PwC in Cameroon, where I spent a lot of time there. And I was kind of happy with what I've done there, because there it was really the contact with companies, understanding their day-to-day work and being able to advise them on the legal requirements for the activities that was purely on legal compliance, but also on tax compliance. wherever they were operating. I started working for the clients in Cameroon, and then I moved into also taking on clients based in Equatorial Guinea. This is a neighboring country with a lot of oil and gas, not far from Cameroon. And I ended up specializing providing advice to the oil and gas industry within the firm. That led me to work going to Equatorial Guinea and sometimes going back to Cameroon. I was just back and forth in those two countries. Very interesting because the work was what? Tax audits, tax reviews. Actually, for the tax reviews, I was acting as, let's say, the tax authorities coming to your place to check your statements, your financial statements, your books and records, and especially understanding how you worked out your taxable income to make sure that you've done properly the deduction that needed to be done, and at least there will be some tax to pay at the end. So I was just raising the different red flags to clients and helping them to make sure that, okay, the tax return can go, and then they could then submit the tax return. It was a lot of work like that, but also M&As. We were doing some M&As, a lot of M&As, and proper legal advice. Any day on the phone, you can have any phone call and had to respond to what your clients was asking.
So you were working as much as an attorney as you were as a consultant in those
Exactly.
roles.
That's exactly what it was. And there was really a lot of work because it was a variety of kind of companies. I like that because that's what I really wanted, rather than just being directly, just working with the government as I used to before. But with the caveat was that I didn't do a lot of international trade contractual work at PwC. That's fine. My aim was to be closer to the company. So if I link this to compliance, I do remember that I'm thinking about this now because I know a lot more about compliance. When we were conducting those assignments for the tax reviews, I wish I could ask more probing questions on some of the expenses that I was seeing being, submitted for deduction. That could have been probably a best way to raise some red flags to the tax director or the general counsel we're working with by saying, hey, you should look into those expenses. They might be improper. But because it wasn't the assignment, it wasn't the remit of my assignments, I simply with a deductible or not. So in hindsight, I was saying to myself, oh, Yvette, that could have been an opportunity to ask those questions. But I guess that today, this is something they are covering, and I hope that the tax authorities are definitely probing and probing and ask more questions about some of those expenses, which are unfortunately sometimes areas for bribe or corruption, things like that. So that's something I enjoy really doing with PwC. And then 6 years later, I came to the UK to join my husband here, and I started working with C5. C5, I discovered that as a marketing, research, and conference organizing company because I didn't know. I didn't know what exactly it meant. But by that time, I really wanted to do something different than consulting, change a little bit my work experience and discover something new. And I joined this organization and discovered that they were producing legal events, which I find as well something of interest. And I started with, again, my comfort zone, if I can say that. I started producing customs compliance events, export control events, which was closer to what I kind of understood. And then slowly I just started doing as well anti-corruption compliance events. So to the point where I set up and launched a proper division that definitely research and produce those commercially driven events for compliance officers, chief compliance officer, general counsel, and other functions related to compliance within any company. So it lasted, actually, I worked for C5 for 15 years. And within C5, I was then not forced to, but I had the opportunity to learn and to discover a lot more compliance, to understand exactly what is at stakes for companies, and also understand the challenges they face because to put together a conference program, it really had to be relevant.
Right.
It
You
is
have to know it in order to be able to coordinate.
absolutely, it has to
Right.
be relevant to that target because they are investing. It is an investment. They're paying to attend your conference. It should be relevant. It should be something they want at that time. It has to be timely. They need to take away something really tangible they can implement in their companies. So there was a very important exercise about judgment as to, is this viable? It
Mm-hmm.
is commercial viable for my audience, but it is also commercial viable for my company because we're making money by doing conferences. So that was, again, a very good exercise to get trained, to get those skills, to understand exactly what is of value, what is not, what is less, what is just news. And
Absolutely.
that was very interesting. So in 2014, I went along in launching the Women in Compliance Awards for the first time. It was an awards that was meant to celebrate the achievement of women within the compliance industry. And it worked actually for 7 years and still a very well regarded award ceremony. And I hope to keep seeing that actually running every year. Now, after my 15 years of C5, unfortunately, given the COVID-19 and the consequences of the pandemic, the
Those
organization,
that in the event, COVID and the events industry are not were not really good friends, were they?
absolutely no way, absolutely no way. So you can't do those face-to-face meetings. I mean, again, I have nothing against online conferences, it's fine, but it's not always the same.
It's a
So
different, it is a different, it's a completely different beast. And yeah,
completely
it's been good at keeping us going, but I don't know about you, but I am very ready when safe to do so, to get on a plane and get back in front of people and spend time in a room with people.
absolutely. That's completely different.
Yeah.
And the value was no longer the same, it was no longer there. So really, this is one of the industry that was really hit really hard by the COVID. So unfortunately, the company could not go on. So all of the employees were actually made on furlough for 7 months. Now, it was a challenging period. It was a challenging set of months we had to go through. And that's what I was saying in my introduction, that yes, it was bad. It brought the bad, but it also brought the good in a certain way, because during that period, it was an exercise of testing your mindset. That's how I see that. I think my mindset was tested, my faith was tested, and my self-confidence was definitely tested.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I passed the test because I completely mentally refused to not do anything. You can't just not do anything. I just started creating my own kind of work. Every day I was waking up as I used to do, and subscribing and registering for many webinars, keep really busy and looking after every single compliance webinars I could get. And I
Mm-hmm.
also just use that opportunity as well to finalize some of my qualifications, so and compliance certification. I use that to do all these things. And a couple of books I was reading as well that helped me as well to go through. I remember that it was around that time where Lisa Finn and Mary Shirley, they actually published their book, which is Descending the Elevator Back Down. That was really a
Great
good,
book.
absolutely good. For me, it was timely, really to read, to go through it. I read another book that my mother actually recommended me to read. It is that the title is The Purpose Driven Life. What on earth am I here for? It's written by Rick Warren. And I'm now reading Reinventing You by Dory Clark. So all these books have kind of helped me as well to understand where I stand and what do I need. You need to definitely reinvent yourself, and you need to look into something that is more positive than the current situation. For everyone going through this process, going through this photo, or I don't know, I mean, having to figure out or wondering what exactly happened in my life, I'm sure there's definitely something positive out of this. It's always a time to kind of check, to reflect, to revisit, to assess, to adapt, to change, to go back and to make sure that these are the process I'm following because I have an objective. I want to do something else and I have to do something else because COVID-19 and the consequences is a change.
Oh,
And when it
yeah.
happens, you have to adapt to the change. And it can be a good one, a good change or a bad change, but you still need to adapt, whatever it is. And change is always seasonal. It's not final, it's not permanent, it's always temporary. Then adapt to that and always make sure that you know exactly who you are and you know what your value, what your value is, so that you can carry on. And even if we went through that process in the end, the whole team, my team when I was working within C5 were made redundant. So we had then to look for work and start to completely reinvent ourselves. I thank God that I started thinking about that during the follow process because I took a lot of time to think about what is next, what can I do next. That's how I came across to like the idea for the time being to launch that consultancy business. And I worked today with some big fours. I prefer not to mention the name, into helping them to set up or market clients engagement initiatives within their business. And I'm also targeting, I mean, any organization interested in launching or setting up a proper events division in-house so that they can do themselves. Could be training programs, could be events, could be conferences by hand for the community and only within the compliance industry. But at the same time, I'm also looking for a permanent work within the compliance role. It's
Mhm.
part of it is the new normal. It's a phase that we have to go. I have to go through. I guess many other people also have to go through, but take it as a change, and you have to go through the change. So all this actually, I learn to be patient. I learn to understand the law of process. There is no microwave solution. If I can say that, there's no microwave solution. There's a process. You have to go through a process, accept it, so that you are get ready for something else. And also understanding and obeying the law of time, good timing. When is the good time? What's the right time? It's the time. When it's not, you still need to go through the process. So that's kind of, this is kind of advice I can provide to anyone else going through this particular phase.
Yeah, very interesting. So I have just a couple of questions. One, going back into your origin story. So you had a parent, your father was both an attorney and a judge. Can you talk a little bit about how that set? You said you followed in his footsteps by going to law school, not necessarily going into judicial law, but how did having that kind of an upbringing um adjust your mind or how set your mind for a compliance mindset? Did somebody whose job it was to adjudicate the laws, do you think how did that impact your philosophies on compliance?
I think it was only because my dad was someone who liked order, and definitely respecting what is right. And it was always shared with my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
You need to follow the law. You have to respect the law. The law is not here to play. And also understanding that the law is very, how can I say that? Laws are not emotional. It is the law and just the law. It may brings to you, let's say, an unwanted outcome. It may be tough or severe, but that's the law. But you have to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
If you know beforehand what you need to do, just follow the instructions. Don't deviate. There's no shortcuts. Don't deviate. Just do that. So that's what I saw, and I lived with my father in terms of instructions. My mother was doing the same and even more. So I guess, I mean, during that time when growing up, I didn't have any thought about being a compliance person or joining that profession. Absolutely no way. It was just like, just follow what you have to do here. But when I had to go through this exercise, preparing this talk, I then had to reflect and seeing how maybe, just maybe, all these different lessons, everything I was hearing from my father shaped me in a way to get ready to just embrace the fact that just follow the rules and really understand what it is. Don't deviate. Don't go astray. Just make sure you do that. Of course, we have to always follow, of course, the letter, but probably more so the spirit of the law.
Mhm. Well, that's great. That's definitely, without knowing it, you were, they were well establishing you to join this field.
Exactly.
The other thing you talked about that I found really interesting was that you were when in your time working with the UN, you were working on establishing frameworks, based on, I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of time working in standards bodies, things that will create frameworks, not always legal frameworks, but practical frameworks. Can you talk a little bit about how you go into those type of arrangements, knowing that the decisions and the way that you help make those frameworks established will be leveraged by people for a long time to come and will set direction? I don't know about you, but I feel a lot of pressure when I go into those situations, knowing that this will impact how business happens, how law happens, how things operate. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So when I started that assignment, I had to discuss with my dad first. Just kind of say, well, this is something that came up, how to deal with it, where to start, how to do that. Because it was funny. I was a year after my graduation, was kind of too early to
Mm-hmm.
jump into a mission like that. So he said, okay, he gave me some guidance and definitely meeting with the representative of the UNDP in Cameroon, and also just discussing it again to really understand what are the remits of my intervention. I clearly understood that it was a support. It was a legal support I was actually bringing to the whole assignment, but it was legal national consultant to deal with this. It was about, first of all, researching, collecting all information regarding exporting from Cameroon to another country, what the laws are, what exactly that the government has in place, what are the procedures, who are the actors, and how does that work? Where are the roadblocks? So, and how exactly what exactly the government is thinking into changing. What is in discussion? What are the different bills? So it took me a year to do that because I had to really look for the acts, the laws, the bills, everything,
Right.
and meet people to get exactly, first of all, the existing framework, and then analyzing it. Again, I was doing this with my dad because I couldn't do it on my own, and double checking as well with the person in charge of that project, saying, this is what I found. This is what you should be looking for now. One of the things I understood to the end was it was one thing to find out all the information, but it was one thing that was really key was to understand the mapping of the export process, to really understand exactly, because the goal at that time was simplification,
Mm-hmm.
facilitation of trade. So I needed to identify where is that, what is it that the government is not facilitating export? Where is it that the government is not simplifying them? And what can you suggest? What can you recommend to really make sure that we are simplifying the exportation, but we also facilitating it for exporters locally? And then I just make those suggestions. Now the whole framework, I mean, the fact that from my recommendation, the people who was in charge of writing the laws, there was a different team. So when I finished my study, I just gave my recommendation, my findings and recommendations to the lead manager who was on the
Mm-hmm.
project. And then he definitely also made the suggestion to the government. Now, I was not involved in the lawmaking or things like that. And then by the time they did it, I was already working for PwC. I left.
Did you ever go back to look at how the finished program aligned with some of the recommendations?
Yes, I did. I did. There's an organization that deals with export of cocoa and coffee. They actually took one of my recommendations, definitely, to just kind of delete one of the processes within the whole mapping, because that was the whole thing.
Hmm.
And you know that the more processes you have, and this is typically for developing countries, the more processes you have, the more possibility you have for corruption, bribes, things like that.
Right.
There was the possibility to simplify two procedures or two processes into one, which they've done. The rest, I didn't check. It's been a while. That was really a long time ago. But I'm
Very
happy I've done this. But I think it was too early for me to do this kind of work.
interesting. Would now at this point in your career, would you go back and do a similar
Oh,
activity?
I can definitely do that. So I wanted to, it's better to be, how to say, to have more experience, actually knowing how organization works, how they
Right.
function, how they, definitely. By the time I have no knowledge about customs, for example. It was too early. So it took me a lot of time really to grasp and make, and even by now, from today, I could have even asked, I could have even recommended a lot of more things that I couldn't do by the time earlier. I mean, that's how I see that mission.
Yeah.
But it was a good exercise.
Good. Well, I can recommend. I've been on. I said I've been on a number of ISO, the International Standards Organizations committees, and advise some other groups. And the opportunity to be able to shape how the world operates in a legal and procedural framework is one. If you get the chance to do it, I highly recommend it to those watching this. And it sounds, Yvette, like you have the same recommendation.
Oh, good.
Good. So now let's move into this in the current state you're at. So you've spent the last number of months on furlough. You've um, you've worked to keep yourself current, to keep aware. I guess my first question is, you talk about preparing for what comes next. How do you balance out or decide the things you're going to focus on, not knowing what your next opportunity is going to be, whether it's in events, whether it's in compliance, whether it's in back in a more legal framework type role? How are you making the decisions about where you put your focus?
I think that is two or three early months into furlough, it was, I have to admit, it was difficult for me to look into my calendar. I see that completely empty with no idea. So I had to book those webinars to get them completely full to make
Yeah.
sure that I do have stuff to do, I do have stuff to watch, I do have stuff to learn. And I've done that the first month, and I've decided to do some certification. So I've done the TASA during that time, the TASA accreditation from
Hmm.
Trace International. And I've done a lot of courses that SPA compliance consulting run. You probably know Christy
Hmm.
Granhart. Done a couple of these things. The good thing about that is you had at the end of each of them a test. So you can definitely test knowledge and test. It was good. It felt good to do that. And the more I was doing that, I'm understanding that the next for me is definitely this. It has to be this. And while I'm doing what I'm looking for that, I still need to do something in the meantime. Now, I will do something in the meantime that is closer to my current skills, which is running a division for conference programming, or advising as to how to do that for those who want to do that, or helping organization build communities, because the conference is about building community depending on who you talk to. It can be privacy, it can be compliance officers, can be tax directors. It's all about building a community around their common interest, could be the challenges and the solutions to benchmark. So that's something I could do as well. I mean, I decided not to follow those two at the same time.
Very good. What what advice would you give to people as you know, it's no secret, many people are furloughed, many people have lost their jobs through the course of the last year, for the same reasons, because COVID has come in place, because businesses have changed, because
Absolutely.
costs have been cut. What advice do you have for people in keeping their, how to think about this experience? Because it's easy to start to get down on oneself, to think negatively, to start to think of negative thoughts about the experience. Advice you have for people on how to think about this experience and this time, if they did lose a job, if they did get a furlough, to keep in a positive headspace.
I think one thing I would say, you need someone who is happy to change perspectives. You always need to accept, first of all, the reality. Don't deny it. Accept it. Okay, this is where I am at the moment. It's temporary. You must say that to yourself. I'm saying you must say that. It's not just mentally, say it out loud.
Don't try to, yeah, you have to actually mean it and own it. Yeah.
As I said, it's temporary. It's a season. It's seasonal. Change is seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
You can never stay. Otherwise, it's not change. It's seasonal. So that's how you need to embrace it and take it. And then you simply need to keep the faith that knowing who you are, you can still do something else within either the same area or embrace something else. That's the mindset definitely you need to have, because I agree with you, it's very much easy to drop the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's tempting to just to be angry or to be resentful or things like that. Again, when I was growing up with my dad from the military, there's no time to complain.
Yeah, I guess that, I'm sure that helped.
It doesn't help you. It's waste his time listening you complain. There's no point. Just get on, get on, get on, get on with that. Think about what is next and choose what you want to do, what is next. Don't waste time in complaining. If you want to complain, just take maybe a day, that's fine. Move on the next day.
Yeah,
And
taking a small amount of time is probably worth it. But
yeah, you can move on. And the networking is absolutely something fabulous.
you read my next, but right where I was going to ask about was how networking played in.
Networking. So I started connecting with my previous contact speakers through LinkedIn, and my judges for morning compliance. I come across. I actually met Elizabeth again. I don't know how we met again. Maybe on it was when I was watching one of the webinars. I connected with her. I had to chat with many people just to. It was like a pep talk. It was like discussing things and sharing on this. I mean, just sharing information as to what could be next, what in their view could be next. You have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just stay on your side. We created a WhatsApp group with my former colleagues where we were meeting every end of the month, Friday. We used to do the drinks every month. So we're doing our drinks end of the month on Friday. So I just keeping looking for areas where you can be cheered up, where you can be encouraged rather than isolating yourself and not doing anything. There's always hope in the end. That's exactly what I mean. And then I also believe that you construct that, you build that hope to yourself. Nobody else will do that for you. You have to build it. And you start from believing yourself, connecting with people. And I joined a couple of compliance career connection that Mentor organized. I joined a lot of so this you have to you look for networking and chatting with people, or speaking with your connection, your friends or your neighbors. I'm sometimes speaking to my neighbors here, just having a chat on anything, any topic, and just collecting information from those conversations. If you have a mentor, just trying to go back to your mentors or your mentor and speak with your mentor, ask questions, just become very curious. It's another activity. It's another work that you have to do, because I can guarantee you will rediscover yourself through a process like that. So that's a piece of advice I would say. Don't stay isolated. Believe in yourself. Know who you are. Stop the complaining or the resentment at some point, and just move on. Move on. It's behind you.
Great. And you mentioned compliance, career connection. And I'll let, since you mentioned it, I'll let everybody know we have 2 events coming up for compliance, career connection next week, Wednesday and Friday, the 28th and 30th of April. If you're interested, I will make sure that I put a link into the chat if you're watching this live, and if you're watching this on replay, look down below into the text on the MentorCore website, and I'll put a link where you can sign up to the list, the mailing list, and get all the information about this event, about these events. This one will be this one is a panel discussion. This one is quick meetings. Just quick, 5-minute rapid meetings with other people, just to expand your network within the compliance space. You don't have to be looking for a job. You can also be there to help people that need that are looking to find jobs. If you have ways to help, or that you need the help, please sign up there. Look for the link in the chat here shortly. So did you have something else of it on that?
No, that's
okay.
I actually booked for the 30th, and I'm looking forward to that session, because it is opportunity to keep networking, because you have to always be in motion. You can't stop. So I would definitely recommend any network activity to do. Very important.
Great. So one more question, then we have somebody who's got a question in the chat. Yes. But networking is easy for those, or is easier for those that are extroverted, those that talk to other people, those that get energy from interacting with other people. The network is just as important for people who don't consider themselves extroverts. Do you have any insights for people who aren't as inclined to walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'd like to meet you and get to know you," or how they can expand their network? It's not, for introverts, it's not quite as easy as for extroverts.
Yes, I really agree. So again, if I look, before actually answering your question, I just want to just explain that back to my childhood, because we had to sometimes move from places to places with a given short notice. There was no time to make solid friendship. It was always, well, any acquaintances, contact friends, and then you could, I mean, it was constantly changing. So to the point where today, I don't have any particular, I don't have any particular attachment in a particular area or in a particular job or in a particular function because of people. I'm more driven by what I'm looking for. So it's easier for me to make new contacts, to make more contact, because change always happens. You can have, I mean, let's say some contacts today, tomorrow we have new ones, because you have to move from places to places. Mm-hmm. I mean, the advice I might just say to the person is really think about what you want. Is there any particular information that you want to get from somebody? That's how you definitely need to start speaking to that person. It's a little difficult for me to ask, I mean, to give an advice other than have a go. Just try and reach that person, or get a recommendation from another person to have access to that other person. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. Use the people else to help to
exactly
bridge to the people you don't.
Exactly. It's absolutely to be introduced by someone else. Probably that could probably work that way. But think about what you want and try to reach that person, to get to know that person, of course, and then you definitely introduce what you're looking for. It has to be your driver, I guess. And I
Great.
agree, it's not easy when you're very introvert, but it's something that you need to work on. Because
Mhm.
I used to be very shy and very discreet, because again, for security reasons, we couldn't, as I was growing up, just talk anyhow or
Mhm.
say anything. So I just learned, especially in university, how to really approach people. We had sessions actually to speak publicly, and with no fear at all, to really reach out to someone, because that particular person may have the answer to the question that you have in your mind.
Yeah, I've come to find that I am not an introvert. But people on my teams over the years, people I've worked with over the years that are introverted, the times in which they come out, they speak, it is some of the wisest, most valuable insights. And in there, you need to give opportunities for them to be able to share those. And I do see one of our future speakers, Wendy Badger, has said, "Hey, let's put a pin in this introvert topic, and we'll cover it at her session on Wednesday, May 19th." So, if you're
That's
interested
a
in
good
the
idea.
introvert
That's a good
discussion,
idea.
please come to that.
Yes, yes.
You can
That's a
register on mentorcore.biz. So we have one more question from the from an attendee, asking, what advice would you have for recent graduate that's looking to transition into a career focused on anti-corruption and bribery compliance?
Right. I mean, for that particular graduates, I would, I mean, networking will be one of my recommendation. Really join, again, at this time around, the only networking I know is the career, complex career connection. Definitely subscribe to that, join that. Secondly, through the discussion you will have through our network, maybe you will have an advice to take maybe a certification, or again, I haven't asked whether the graduate is graduate in compliance, because we do have a lot of graduation specific specialties in compliance today.
Right.
If you don't have one, maybe look into having one, maybe a course, not necessarily at university at this time around, but you can just have one certification. But really, and also look for attending webinars, conferences that are free to attend. I would recommend that. If you don't have the money to pay, fine, but otherwise, you can select those who are free. Secondly, I would also recommend that you subscribe to few newsletters that was written by different firms, law firms or consulting firms. Just pick maybe two, that's all, because I know there's a lot. Just pick
Yeah.
two and stay with them. So for consistency, stay with them and keep that. Start as well. Another advice I would also recommend, that's exactly what I was always sharing with my producers, is to really look for cases, anti-corruption cases. You can go to the website of the US DOJ and the Serious Fraud Office in the UK. They always publish the sentence, they publish the DPAs, they publish the resolutions, they publish all the cases. You will learn the facts. You will also understand exactly what was the wrongdoing and how actually the prosecution actually dealt with that, what kind of sentences they actually had. So that will get you familiarized with the vocabulary and what exactly it is at stakes. That would be my recommendations.
Right. And we have some feedback from one of the attendees as well about seeking out opportunities for informational interviews with individuals whose careers you admire or individuals in positions to which you aspire. Ask them what made them successful and what makes candidates stand out from an experience, knowledge, and skills perspective. So in a nutshell, go right to the source. Ask people. I have found it's long been the case, but I think even more so in the last year now, that people are very approachable. People want to interact. We haven't been able to do it in person, so people want to have those kind of interactions, and we all want more people more well experienced and the right people coming into the field. So if I get a question asked, what do you want to see in these types of roles? I want to have those interactions. And I can say I haven't met anybody who has genuinely behind the scenes said, look, I really don't want to talk to those people. They've all been very positive. Yeah, please, love to have those interactions. So reach out to the people directly and ask them. It's not an easy thing to push that button and go message. It's easy
Yes.
technically, but it's not always easy to get your arm to do it. But
I definitely agree with you, Dan. It's definitely something that is important. I even have to add that retiring compliance people, compliance professionals, they can't retire. So, Dan and Elizabeth, there's no retirement prospect for you.
no.
And even if you do, just change your activity, because there's a lot in mentoring, there's a lot in guiding, there's a lot in, you see, a doctor, a medical doctor is trained as a medical doctor and will for life. If you're a
Right.
teacher for life. So if you're a compliance professional, I'm afraid it's for life.
Well, that's good. There's lots of work to be done, so we know we can fill it. Another question came in, Yvette. What is the recommended education level for experienced attorneys that want to enter the field, the compliance field? Is a certification necessary or required?
For experienced attorneys, I don't even think that, even for an experienced attorney, I don't think that it is necessary to do that unless they want to. Now, would this be a question of confidence? I don't know. Unless they want to, because most of the experienced attorneys that I know, they don't have any compliance certification, and they are actually part of they really involved into compliance work, because an attorney can do investigations. I don't think they really need a certification. They can join webinars and things like that. Now, if they want to, there's definitely a lot of certification out there. I would definitely recommend the lots. I love TASA. Sorry for, I don't want to do any particular publicity here, but I like what they do. Trust International, they put in those the anti-bribery specialist accreditation. This is really, really good to do that. And there's a lot. They also, the SECE is also doing a lot of certification like that. And for those who want to be more specialized, they can do the ACAMS one. It's definitely for that. But as an experienced attorney, I personally don't think they need a certification.
Okay. And the certification, does the certification help get you into a pile? You know, if you're amongst 50 people looking that are being looked at for a role, is the certification, would you rather see somebody that had experience or certification?
I think if I had to recruit, I sometimes had to do that during my previous role as C5. I would look first of all for experience, because the experience, the certification can come. You can have a certification while you're already working, and having a certification, depending on how it was, what was the training, what was the course, what was the curriculum, and how actually it was delivered, can also open you a door. If you don't have some information about a specific certification, it may just be something to add into your CVs, but it might not necessarily do the difference. I know that the experience is definitely one thing that people are looking for. Right. I think for me, there's no right or wrong in that particular answer, because some people may choose you because they see how serious you are. If you take a certification, if you take a course, it will show how serious you are with transitioning to this particular function, and can be the answer, and can be the factor actually to choose you.
And it also depends on the person that's reading that's hiring or looking at the position, what their experience and their preference is.
Yeah.
There is unfortunately no single answer to this question, I don't think. All right. Unfortunately, we have arrived near the end of the hour. This has been just an amazing discussion, Yvette. Thank you. Your history, your origin story, your experience and your experiences through furlough, through through times of change have been really valuable. But you know, we end each of these discussions with a very specific question, because MentorCore is all about mentoring. I'd like to know what the best advice is that you've ever gotten from a mentor.
So I actually have two, but I will start with the first one, which is actually linked to MentorCore. My mentor used to tell me that it is wise to learn from experience, but it's wiser to learn from experience of others, because it saves you the time to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
When you understand, when you learn from someone else's experience, it will help you to quickly understand the situation and know how to react, because you learn it from someone somewhere. It saves you time to do that. So that was one of the pieces of advice I got. So it's very important, whenever you see somewhere lessons learned about this, try to listen to that. It will help you in a way, or will help someone else, because it saves you time from doing mistakes. Nobody has the time to make mistakes, to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can capitalize on knowing what someone else went through, and then you can gain experience for that. So that was a piece of advice. The other one, if I have time, was
Please.
it was more on accountability. So as I was just moving into a management role, I then had a team to work with and to assign work to. And then my CEO at that time, because we were having some coaching sessions, she said to me, well done for the promotion, but make sure that at some point you are always ready to take over the job or the work that your reports can no longer do because of maybe illness or a very long absence. So make sure that, because the project will not wait. So be careful about that. So from then, that was probably seven years ago, I used myself to make plans for continuity of any single project, to do that. That helped me a lot.
That is so wise. I had a team many years ago who would buy lottery tickets as a group, and I lived in fear of the time in which they won, because the entire team would have left at the same time. And so you have to be ready. It's really, really great advice. Yvette, thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your sharing, for your openness. And I really am glad that you were able to join us today. And I know Lisa Beth is disappointed she couldn't be here, but thank you so much for being here. And we hope you'll come back again soon and share some of your progress.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, and well done to MentorCore. I like this
Thank
community.
you. Thank you. And if to everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your support. You can watch the replay of this on mentorcore.biz at any time. If you're interested in learning more about MentorCore, mentorcore.biz/about has information about our program and memberships, and you can sign up from there. Thanks, and have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.